Somewhere inside you, there is a door you haven't opened in years, a small, forgotten door, built from moments you don't remember and fears you still carry without knowing why. Behind that door, your childhood is still breathing, quietly, patiently, as if waiting for the day you would finally come back for it. Listen carefully, because the past does not return with footsteps. It returns with echoes. The echo of a voice you never heard enough. The echo of a touch that never came. The echo of a love that should have been simple, but wasn't. Tonight, you will open that door, not to remember your pain, but to understand why you still feel it in the quietest parts of your life. Because the truth is this, you didn't grow up with your childhood grew up inside you. There are wounds that do not bleed, wounds that begin softly, not with violence, but with silence. Children are not afraid of the dark, they are afraid of being alone in it, afraid of the shadows their minds create when no one is there to hold their fear with them. In A Monster Calls, the monster is not a creature. It is a memory that refuses to stay buried, a memory shaped like a tree with branches made of guilt, fear, and unanswered questions. The boy in the story doesn't fear the monster. He fears the truth the monster brings, because the truth is heavier than the dark, and children feel weight long before they understand it. You were the same. You carried fears that were too big for your hands, so your mind made monsters large enough to carry them for you. But monsters born in childhood don't disappear. They evolve, they grow quieter and sharper. Sometimes they appear as anxiety, sometimes as anger, sometimes as the strange feeling that something is wrong with you, even when nothing is. Silence is dangerous when no one helps you understand it, because a child alone with their thoughts learns to fear their own heart. Every adult carries a fracture inside them, a thin, almost invisible crack running through the middle of who they believe they are. This crack is not weakness, it is a memory of the moment you first realized the world could hurt you without explanation. Some people hide the crack with perfection, some with silence, some with laughter that feels real to everyone except themselves. But the crack is still there. It opens when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when someone speaks in a tone that reminds you of a voice from long ago. And it whispers, softly, dangerously, "You were never enough." But that whisper was never your voice. It was the voice of a child trying to understand why the love they needed did not come in the way they hoped. When childhood breaks, it doesn't always break loudly. Sometimes it breaks quietly, in the kind of places where people survive instead of live. In the Florida Project, the world around the children is collapsing, not with explosions, but with exhaustion, with unpaid bills, thin walls, and dreams patched with tape. The adults are drowning in their own unfinished pain, and children learn to breathe in water meant to sink them. Chaos becomes normal, instability becomes routine, fear becomes familiar. And children adapt in the only way they know how, by pretending everything is okay, by laughing louder, running faster, imagining harder. But deep inside, they know the world is shaking, because a child can feel instability long before they can name it. And that instability doesn't stay in childhood. It follows you. It moves into the quiet parts of your adult life, the moments when a voice rises, a door closes, or someone walks away too quickly. Your body remembers even when your mind forgets. The collapse that happened back then still echoes inside you now, not as memories, but as reactions. A sudden fear of being abandoned, a tightening in the chest when someone gets upset, a need to over-explain yourself so no one misunderstands you. These are not flaws. These are old alarm bells still ringing in a new life. Because the most painful truth is this: your childhood home became the blueprint for how you still expect the world to treat you. There comes a moment, quiet and unexpected, when the past stops hiding. It can be anything that opens the door: a smell, a song, a tone of voice, a simple word that hits deeper than it should. These moments aren't weakness. They're memory codes, signals from the version of you that never got to finish their emotions. And suddenly, you understand something you never had the language for. You weren't overreacting all these years. You were remembering. You weren't too sensitive. You were unprotected. You weren't needy. You were neglected. You weren't dramatic. You were scared in ways no one saw. And the moment this realization hits, something in you shifts, subtly but permanently. You begin to see your reactions not as flaws, but as survival strategies you created long before you knew what survival meant. You understand that the child you once were didn't fail at anything. They adapted, they endured, they made it here. And that understanding becomes the first gentle step toward healing. Because revelation is not about uncovering pain. It's about finally giving it a name so it can stop controlling you from the dark. Healing is rarely a dramatic moment. It usually begins quietly, the same way pain once did. Sometimes healing begins with a simple realization you deserved more than you were given. In the pursuit of happiness, a father with nothing gives his child something priceless: safety, a place to fall asleep without fear, a pair of arms that promise to stay. Healing looks like that: soft, steady consistency in a world that once taught you to expect the opposite. Maybe no one gave you that safety when you needed it most. Maybe your childhood was more fragile than warm, more uncertain than gentle. But you are not that child anymore, and your story does not have to repeat itself. You can choose the kind of comfort you never received. You can speak to yourself in the tone you once needed to hear. You can build the emotional home you were once denied. Healing begins when you stop waiting for the version of your parents who never came, and start becoming the version of yourself you always needed. Sometimes that looks like resting without guilt. Sometimes that looks like saying no without apologizing. Sometimes that looks like finally admitting that the strength you forced yourself to carry was never a burden meant for a child. Healing is not about erasing the past. It's about understanding that your pain was never proof that there was something wrong with you. It was proof that you were trying to love in a place where love had too many conditions. And the moment you grasp this, even for a second, your heart shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically, but certainly, like a door that finally unlocks from the inside. Because here is the truth you were never told. You weren't hard to love. You were taught love had to be earned. There comes a point in every healing journey when the pain that once defined you begins to feel smaller, not because it disappeared, but because you grew around it. Your inner child doesn't want perfection. They don't want revenge. They don't want answers to every unanswered question. They want this: to know that you finally see them. All the versions of you that learned to be quiet so others could be comfortable, that learned to be strong so others could be careless, that learned to disappear so others could stay. Those versions of you are not gone, they are waiting. And they rise the moment you whisper back to them, I'm here now. Because healing is not a straight line, it is a returning back through the fears you avoided, back toward the emotions you buried, back to the child you once protected by leaving parts of yourself behind. But now, you walk this path with knowledge, with compassion, with the courage to carry what that younger version of you never should have carried alone. Meaning rises slowly, like gold light sliding across a dark room, touching the places that once felt cold with a new kind of warmth. And suddenly, you feel something surprising, a softness where the hurt used to be. Not because the hurt is gone, but because you finally understand why it lived there for so long. And understanding is the beginning of peace. There is a point in every story where running ends, a moment when the heart can no longer pretend that the weight it carries belongs to someone else. In The Whale, the heaviest room in the world is not the man's home, it is his mind. A place filled with guilt, shame, regret, and love that could never find its way out. But even in that room, where sorrow hangs in the air like gravity, there is a moment, a small, trembling moment, when he chooses honesty. And honesty, no matter how fragile it sounds, is freedom. Because the hardest person you will ever forgive is yourself. The mirror moment is not about beauty, it's not about strength, it's about truth, truth that you have avoided for years without noticing. Truth like this: you were not the reason your childhood broke. You were the piece that tried to hold everything together. In the quiet reflection of your own memories, you begin to see that the pain you carry has nothing to do with worth and everything to do with circumstance. No child survives chaos without learning to blame themselves. No child longs for love without believing they must earn it. And no child walks through darkness without thinking the darkness is somehow their fault. But the mirror shows otherwise. It shows a child who was doing the best they could with a world too heavy for their small hands. It shows you, now, seeing them, finally. Here is the deepest truth your life has been waiting to hear. The person you became is not who you truly are. It is who you needed to be to survive. Take a breath, slow, gentle, honest. You have just walked through rooms you closed long ago, rooms filled with echoes, silence, shadows, and memories you once carried like stones in your pockets. But look at you now. You didn't break, you didn't run, you didn't turn away. You opened the door, you stood in the dark, you listened, and for the first time, you understood what your younger self was trying to say. Pain doesn't heal when it is forgotten. It heals when it is finally heard. And tonight, you listened. Your childhood is not a ghost. It is a voice that has been waiting for someone strong enough to hear it without fear. That someone is you. You are not defined by the wounds you carry. You are defined by the courage it took to face them. And now, as the gold light opens inside the quietest corner of your heart, you can finally say the words your younger self has been waiting a lifetime to hear. I'm here. You're safe. We're going home now.